Hey everybody, this is Alzorath, and welcome back to Diablo 2. Today we're doing another build video with the Amazon this time. We're kind of doing the fundamental builds for a little while. After we got done with the weirdness of the Zealot Necromancer, figured it was time to show off some of the more kind of like mainstream stuff. Expect a few more mainstream-ish characters. This one's kind of a mainstream that fell out of favor for the Lightning ones. This is one of the alternate builds that a lot of people ran with, and obviously you're seeing it slowly whittle away at Bale in the background. That is because I can't even remember which patch it was, Guided Arrow got nerfed a lot, and Guided Arrow doesn't pierce anymore, so it kind of sucks. Used to be that you could actually go against bosses with Guided Arrow and send out a bunch of them, have them piercing and hopping all around and doing a ton of damage really fast, but they fixed that. They also fixed the tracking of Guided, so you have to have line of sight for it to actually track. So, yeah, you'll see me sometimes use that in the Bale part of this, which those of you on Twitch can't see, but those of you on YouTube can. This is being recorded live over on the Twitch channel, for those of you that are terribly curious. But this is the Multishot Zon, which against bosses, again, I mentioned Guided Arrow because Guided Arrow is your way of killing single targets. We also have Magic Arrow on there, which I have brought up to level 20 with plus skills to give us the 20% chance of magic damage on there. Obviously, we do need to give it just a little minute more because that is a very slow Bale kill. So hopefully we're done with that on the YouTube ends and we can actually look at the character. So as far as the character goes, you may notice that I'm actually favoring something that is not as popular. Yes, I do have a Wind Force. Wind Force is good. There's an alternate for this, and Wind Force actually does pretty good PvP because you can do the knockback and kind of really harass players with it, whereas our current option is more PvE. As far as stats go, we're going to just knock those out early because they're very simple. Enough strength, enough dexterity for your gear, and the rest into vitality. That's all you need. You will have enough of a chance to hit if you have a reasonable bow because you're going to need a lot of dexterity to equip any of your bows. It's going to be 100 and something. Even the low-end ones, which this is 167 dex, this one's 152 dex, you're going to need it. And you kind of want it because dexterity gives you increased damage on your bows. Anyway, so that's your stats. Next up, we'll be looking at the skill tree, and we're not the S button skill tree, the T one. I pressed the wrong button there. Obviously, nothing in javelin and spear skills. And as far as the bow skills, the only thing that we're absolutely have to max out on this because we were doing a multi-shot, this does really well in like cows and stuff like that, or climbing the hill that we're about to go fight on, and a few things like that. It's multi-shot. Very good against crowd control, very good at destroying a bunch of enemies, and I was just asked what difficulty I'm on. We're on hell difficulty. So, yeah. But tree-wise, we're going to go ahead. Multi-shot is going to be hitting as many enemies as possible, and it's going to be ripping them to pieces really easily. It is worth noting that on multi-shot, if you have like trigger on hit or anything like that, and various other effects, only affect the middle two arrows. But the side arrows still do damage. It's just the middle two arrows that trigger stuff. So keep that in mind whenever you're aiming. You don't want to necessarily always go for hitting everything on the screen. You may want to be focusing those two arrows on a primary target. And it's also one of those where if you aim close, it spreads further. If you aim far away, it narrows the band. And currently we have a ton of them. You don't have to go up to level 26. I like just maxing it out just because I like the look of it. You can go lower. Once you get to about 15, 20 arrows, you're not going to really notice much of a difference as you put more points into it. There's not much else to spend points in anyway, though. Next up, we maxed out Guided Arrow for single target kills. This is good for bosses and stuff like that, and it is pretty solid. It does not do as good as it used to back in the older patches whenever it could pierce and do all this other kind of shenanigans, around the corner shots, nonsense like that, but it's still a decent single target fighter. There is a bit of an argument between the multi-shot and strafe. We'll do a strafe build eventually. Don't worry, it will be on here. It will exist. It'll be very similar to this one equipment-wise, but it plays somewhat differently. As far as Magic Arrow, you may notice it's slightly higher level than we were kind of used to. It's not just level 7. It's prereq. No, we're actually going for level 20 on that. That is my left click. Left click is always going to be Magic Arrow for me because one, it doesn't use an arrow, and once I get it up to level 20, you can get it higher if you want. It's going to have that 20% physical damage converts to magic damage. The minimum I would set this up to is the point where you get up to 0 mana cost per use, and that is, I want to say 12 or so. I can't remember off the top of my head. I just go up to 20 because I like 1/5 of my damage becoming magic to deal with physical immunes. So that is pretty solid. So as far as our passive and magic skills, and the reason we're doing it last is I actually got 1 into Critical Strike, 1 into Penetrate, just because they're nice. If you're having trouble hitting, Penetrate can help out a decent amount. Critical Strike, you don't really need it because it's just a 1-point skill. You're going to put it in there, and it's not going to help you out very much because you're going to have enough Critical Strike from other sources, usually in these kind of builds. And then we get Pierce up to about 60%. If you want to, like, guarantee Pierce with the equipment that we're using, you want to get it up to 67%. Because the belt we have has a 33% Pierce, so it'd be 100% Pierce, and that would be extremely solid. I got it close enough. It doesn't really matter too much to me if it doesn't pierce every single time. We put 1 point into each of the evades because, well, we need them to get our Valkyrie. We do want a Valkyrie on this. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of evade, avoid, and dodge, but they're okay. And for as little as we get hit, we're not going to get locked down by it. Now, Inner Sight versus slow missiles, not going to use either of those, but they can be used in some niche situations, like if you're fighting a bunch of fire arrow skeletons, you can slow arrows on them. And then the rest of the points into Valkyrie first, max that out, get it kind of solid, and then we put the rest into Decoy to boost its life up. We could also put into Penetrate for attack level, and you can also put more points into the evasion things. Not really necessary. That's enough for it to tank through stuff. Critical Strike does work on it. It causes the same effect as it does for you. Whereas Penetrate does not work exactly 1-for-1. This is just, Penetrate just increases attack rating per level. She's a tank. But that is fairly solid there. That's all the skills for her. Oh my. Whatever are we going to go on to next? Equipment. Mercenary equipment is kind of like our standard. We have Reaper's Toll, Fortitude, and Vampire's Gaze. It's our Bear Vampire's Gaze this time. Sometimes you can put Andariel's thing in there, but Andariel's Visage is not necessarily the best thing for them. It's just nice. It's one of the ones I have rotating around on the mercenaries. Now, as far as the actual equipment on our character, one thing to note, I have loaded up on the attack rating charms and stuff like that I had on the Zealot Necromancer. And yeah, that's just to boost our attack rating if we want it. And we also have a little bit of extra damage on here because, as you can tell, our damage is okay. It's not amazing, but it's enough to get the job done. So as far as what we have on us, Gore Riders, Crushing Blow, Deadly Strike, Open Wounds, 3 good skills to have on there. I don't mind the fact that Crushing Blow is reduced effectiveness for the Amazon. It works, it does a little bit, and it does a decent amount of damage. It's good. So they're good boots to just have a few of sitting around and rotate through. If you don't have this, you can do Goblin Toe. You could do War Travelers if you don't care about Crushing Blow, although I like the Open Wounds to keep things from healing in case I run across a particularly tough enemy. We have our Dual Leech Ring that you're going to see a million freaking times because I love this ring. It's one of my prized possessions on Diablo 2. We've got High Lord's Wrath for plus skills and increased attack speed. Now, the reason I'm using this instead of Atma's is because I do need the increased attack speed. I need it. And I also need the lightning resist because our resists are absolute rat garbage. It has a little bit of Deadly Strike on there, which does add up a little bit. But yeah, we need that attack speed. We needed, I think we needed 70% attack speed or something like that, or 50, somewhere around there. We needed we are just 5% over what we need for this character. So yeah, we needed the increased attack speed to hit 8 frames per attack. So 7 or 8, I don't remember which. It's close to the maximum, but not quite. It's fast enough. Once you start getting into the the lower frame counts per attack, each extra frame increases your damage extremely. So yeah, it's the difference between like a 5 and 4 attack speed for a druid. You are increasing your damage per second a lot with that. Whereas if you're looking at the difference between, say, a 14 frame attack and a 13 frame attack, the difference in damage is going to be negligible. So yeah, whenever you start getting up into those high range builds, you do want to be looking at that attack speed, getting it as tight as possible while still doing enough damage per shot. Next up, we have the Vampire Gaze. This is just one that I had around that was fairly decent stats. I wanted the damage reduction on there. I had a scintillating jewel of fervor that I stuck in there, which is where you get the 12% resist and the 15% increased attack speed. You can get that attack speed from Andariel's Visage. You can get it from some other sources. I do want that attack speed on here, so definitely consider, even if you just have a jewel of fervor and need to stick it into like a good circlet, that is fine. Don't put it into like your prized possession circlets, but put it into like a +2 Amazon run walk circlet or something like that. And it will work out fairly decent. The Vampire Gaze is just really good because it's dual leech. It does some cold damage, which helps out, and it has damage reduction. Really solid little combo there. Vamp Gazes are sought after for a reason. Next up, we have Fortitude, the Archon Plate. This is one of our better ones. So we've got 300% enhanced damage on here, which helps out on our damage front, and it has 30% resist all. Normally I would use I would use Chains of Honors for resistances, but since we're not going to be close to the enemies, we can take the extra damage and be perfectly fine with it. It has a boost to life, it has a little bit of resistance. It does not have plus skills, but this build doesn't need plus skills. So Fortitude tends to work out a little bit better in that regard. As far as the belts, hey, Razortail. I mentioned this, didn't I? That's a 33% piercing attack on Razortail. That's just its default. Most of the rest of the stats, meh. Dexterity helps out getting up to your stat recs for your bow and letting you have more life. But other than that, it's not going to help out too much. You're just using it for the piercing attack. You could go for some other things and boost up your piercing skill. There are a few slow effects that are really nice on it. I'm trying to remember which belt it was that has slow. There's like 2 of them, but that would be kind of nice. Ravenfrost, we just do that for the attack rating and the dexterity. It has some cold absorb and all that other stuff. Also, cannot be frozen is kind of essential on a build like this. You can put a Cham in your Vampire Gaze, but you need to find that extra attack speed somewhere else, or you're just going to be a frame slower. It's okay, but cannot be frozen is absolutely lovely. A little bit of extra cold damage for a little bit of extra chill is nice. And for gloves, there's a few options here. You could do the enchant gloves with 20% increased attack speed that increase your attack rating a bit better than these, and they'd be nice. It's up to you if you like those. I like them personally because I don't have to keep buffing things. We have Laying of Hands here because people keep telling me I need to use it. It's really good against bosses. This is not a boss killer build, so it's just there because everyone keeps mentioning they want to see me use it. There are reasons to use Laying of Hands. They are amazing for killing bosses. They're really good for your zealots and stuff like that. They're really good for a lot of different builds. They are overrated. So it's kind of like, why? So, but yeah, it's good for killing bosses. And it's also one of the key things for my Glass Cannon Paladin, which I'll eventually show off, which can almost one-shot Diablo in hell. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Holy Bolt on striking, kind of meh. But it'll tell you that you're actually hitting whenever you see those flying out. If you're having trouble hitting, Magnus Skin will probably generally be a little bit better, or the ones that have enchant on them, random chance on striking, can be pretty good. Remember, they only trigger with the central 2 arrows, so be sure to be hitting stuff with those central arrows. And yeah, Laying of Hands is a very solid set of gloves. I do think it is overrated for what it is, although like half the enemies in the game are demons, so your mileage may vary. It doesn't help with cows, funnily enough, because cows are beasts. But last but not least is something I've been putting off, and that is Faith. This is actually a contentious point. Windforce versus Faith. A lot of people will swear by Windforce. Windforce is the better PvP bow, because you have knockback, you can put an Alm in it, you could put some increased attack speed in it, you could do a lot of things with it. You could do some fun with the Windforce, and it can do a ton of damage. This does less damage on the top end. It does more bottom end damage, but overall it's there. But the reason I'm using this is, one, fanaticism keeps me from having to invest into increased attack speed, which is kind of something that I need for PvE. It's increased attack speed is good for PvP, but generally getting the damage onto your targets is a little bit more important than how fast you're getting it on there, because a lot of people are going to have the skills to evade, avoid, and not deal with your nonsense. But the Faith is really good for PvE, and also helps our mercenary, increases attack speed, increases attack rating, boosts his damage a little bit more for you than it does for him, because you're the origin of the aura. Fanaticism works that way. +2 all skills is nice. We technically have +5 bow and crossbow skills because I had a good Grand Matron sitting around, so that's good. It was not superior, unfortunately, which is sadness. Does give us 330% enhanced damage. You can ignore target defense. This can go in non-Amazon bows if you want to use it among other characters. I personally don't have a use for that. I have a Diamond Faith as well that I can put on mercenaries. So that is a fairly decent bow as well. Ignore target defense. Not too good against bosses. Again, this is not a boss killer. It's absolutely terrible at it. This is a swarm killer. So against just average enemies, ignore target defense is going to make you insanely good. The 300% bonus to attack rating helps hit them even further. So you have your attack rating boosted up a great deal, and the enemy's defense is just not there. So it's all just your attack rating and your level versus just their level. So that is a really good thing there. This does have bonus damage to undead, which kind of works okay with the laying of hands to kind of make your actual damage much higher than displayed, because, yeah, we're doing extra damage versus everything except for beasts now. So it works out pretty good. A little bit of fire damage on there, a little bit of resistances. Sorry for coughing. I need to hydrate again. But all resistances helps out a great deal considering how crappy our resistances are. And the reanimate is oddly something that a lot of people ignore on this. Reanimate is actually useful for this build, because what they'll do is you'll kill like some enemies, like a handful of just rando of the weaker enemies, and you'll get like 1 or 2 skeletons pop up, and then all the other enemies around will congeal around that, giving you just a really good target to zero in your multi-shot. And we'll show you what I mean by zeroing in your multi-shot. So if we put the mouse close to us, you see that it spreads probably about half the screen, whereas if you shoot it out here, it spreads about 1/4 of the screen. So that's zeroing in. So if a bunch of enemies were like all around you, you want to click close and get that big spread. Whereas if the enemies have bunched up around that reanimated, boom, you just hit a whole bunch of them with that. And we just used up a bunch of mana. Multi-shot is pretty expensive. So what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and just swarm into these guys, and you can see it just shreds them before they can even get to us. It is a wall of arrows. We will fight in the shade situation. So yeah. And whenever we come across a big beefy, we just kill off all the littles around it. And we go in on the single target with magic arrow. And it does its work. And you generally, with this build, ideally, if you are kind of like used to how enemies spawn, you can kind of almost kill most of the things before you even see them. Like, we know there's going to be some enemies over there. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get a spawn over there. Usually there is one. But if you have undead, you do want to kind of split it between the undead and the not undead. You can see nothing really stands against this. It's a wave of death. And whenever you're against these guys, this is going to be the tough thing, and why I have the mana potions, is you want to actually have, yeah, the mana potions in case you need it. Right there we didn't, because, you know, magic arrow is free and it does extra damage. We just had like too many things on the screen, and all the sprites disappeared. That's always a bad situation. Oh, we did kill things over there, and that's why we didn't see the swirls, is because guess what, they were undead. So my call was right. But yeah, you can just murder everything without even thinking about it. The only real drawback to this particular build is that you do run out of arrows pretty easily. And multi-shot only uses 1 arrow per shot, but you are going to be spamming it because you're doing less damage per shot. And that's where strafe is the big argument here, because strafe does more damage, but it uses up more arrows. But still, yeah, it's pretty solid. But that is how you play this build. That is the end of the tutorial for those of you on YouTube. If you want to sometimes catch these live, I do stream them over on Twitch sometimes. Admittedly, some of them I don't, if I'm just not feeling like streaming live, or if I feel like I'm going to have to re-record it a few times, or if I'm not sure if the build works. In the case of the Zealot Necromancer, I really wasn't expecting that one to work, so I did all the recording for it off screen, and it ended up working exceptionally well. But yeah, we do these over on Twitch. You can check them out with the link down in the description, and I will see you guys next time on YouTube. Bye.